This title promises an exploration into a profound and often pondered question. To address it comprehensively, the script must undertake the following tasks. Define life before we are born. What exactly are we seeking to understand? This encompass pre-existence of the soul, divine foreknowledge and predestination, or even a more metaphorical life in God's plan. Examine biblical texts for clues. Identify and analyze specific scriptures that speak to conception, the womb, God's knowledge of individuals before birth, and any hints of a premortal state. Explore theological interpretations. Discuss how different theological traditions and scholarly perspectives interpret these biblical passages. Are there differing views on pre-existence or divine selection? Address the revelation aspect. What does the Bible reveal? Is it a clear declaration, subtle hints, or a framework for deeper theological understanding? The script should clarify the nature of this revelation. Script for Bible by Candlelight. What does the Bible reveal about life before we are born? Part 1. The Introduction, Sowing the Seeds of Mystery. As the last tendrils of twilight retreat beyond the horizon, and the solitary flame of a candle dances in the hushed chamber, we turn our gaze inward, towards the most profound mystery of our own existence. We stand here breathing, thinking, feeling. But what came before this breath, this thought, this feeling? Was there a whisper of us in the cosmic tapestry before our first cry pierced the air? Did our story begin in the cradle, or was it etched into the very fabric of eternity long before the womb became our temporary sanctuary? Tonight, we embark on a contemplative journey, not into speculative philosophy, but into the ancient pages of Scripture, to uncover what the sacred texts, in their profound wisdom and sometimes subtle hints, reveal about the elusive concept of life before birth. Join us as we seek to illuminate these shadowed pathways, promising not easy answers, but a deeper encounter with the divine narrative of human existence. Part 2. The Core Journey, Deep Exploration. The Genesis of Self. Historical and cultural context. Across civilizations and throughout history, humanity has grappled with the question of origin, not just of the universe, but of the individual soul. Ancient Greek philosophy, particularly Platonism, posited a pre-existence of the soul, a state where souls dwelled in an ideal realm before descending into mortal bodies. Gnosticism, a complex religious movement flourishing in the early centuries CE, also held diverse views on the soul's origin, often involving a fall from a spiritual realm. Within a more Hebraic worldview, however, the emphasis shifted. While the concept of individual pre-existence, as understood in Hellenistic thought, was not a dominant theme, the idea of God's foreknowledge and sovereign plan for individuals was deeply ingrained. The Israelites understood themselves as a chosen people, their destiny woven into God's purposes from the very beginning of creation. This perspective naturally extended to the individual, suggesting a divine intention preceding physical manifestation, even if not a conscious, pre-mortal personal existence. It is within this rich, diverse, yet distinctly monotheistic framework that we must approach the biblical text, carefully discerning what they affirm and what they leave to divine mystery. Decoding the Scripture, unveiling divine foreknowledge. The Bible, while not explicitly detailing a pre-mortal existence for every individual in the same way some Eastern philosophies do, offers compelling glimpses into God's intimate knowledge and purposeful design for us before our birth. Perhaps one of the most poignant declarations comes from the prophet Jeremiah. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Jeremiah 1-5 ESV. This is not merely an expression of God's omniscience, knowing future events, but a profound statement of relationship and purpose. "I knew you" implies a personal, intentional recognition, a divine foresight that precedes our physical formation. It speaks of a specific calling, a divine appointment given even before the first cell divided. Similarly, Psalm 139 offers a breathtaking affirmation of God's creative intimacy. "For you created my inmost being, You knit me together in my mother's womb. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Psalm 139 to 13, 16, NIV. Here, the imagery of knitting suggests a meticulous, deliberate craftsmanship. Our unformed body was not unseen by God. It was already a known entity, its future days already recorded in a divine ledger. This passage underscores that our physical development is not a random occurrence, but a divinely orchestrated process, each detail known and willed by the Creator. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, echoes this sentiment regarding his own calling. But when God, who set me apart from my mother's womb and called me by his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son in me so that I might preach him among the Gentiles. Galatians 1:15-16, NIV. Paul affirms that his designation for ministry was not a post-birth decision but a divine act of setting apart that occurred while he was still in the womb. These passages collectively paint a picture of a God who is intimately involved in our individual stories from their earliest, unseen beginnings. The hidden theological meaning, predestination, and divine sovereignty. Beyond the personal revelations to prophets and apostles, these biblical insights contribute to a broader theological understanding of divine sovereignty and predestination. If God knows us and ordains our days before birth, what does this imply about human free will? This is a question that has occupied theologians for centuries. The Reformed tradition, for instance, places a strong emphasis on God's sovereign election, asserting that God chooses individuals for salvation before the foundation of the world. Ephesians 1:4-5. This doesn't necessarily mean individual souls pre-existed, but rather that God's plan for each person was established in eternity. Conversely, other theological perspectives, while affirming God's foreknowledge, emphasize human responsibility and the ability to respond to God's grace. They might interpret new you as God's perfect understanding of who we would become, rather than a pre-temporal determination of our every choice. Yet, even in these interpretations, the idea of a pre-birth divine engagement remains. Our lives, from conception onward, are not outside the scope of God's loving and knowing gaze. It speaks to a God who is not merely reactive to human choices, but is the primary actor in the grand drama of creation and redemption, with each individual life playing a part in that eternal narrative. Controversies and theories. Navigating the nuances. While the Bible strongly supports the idea of divine foreknowledge and purpose for individuals before birth, it generally does not endorse the concept of individual pre-existence in the sense of conscious souls waiting to be embodied. This distinction is crucial. The early church explicitly rejected the Origenist idea that souls sinned in a pre-mortal state and were thus embodied as a form of punishment. The dominant biblical understanding points to the beginning of human personhood as intricately linked with conception and the womb, where God knits and forms. However, there are fascinating biblical references that sometimes lead to deeper questions. For instance, the encounter between the prophet Jeremiah and God is exceptionally intimate and specific. Was this a unique encounter for a prophet, or does it hint at a universal truth in a more profound sense? What of Jacob and Esau, whom God loved and hated, respectively, before they were born or had done anything good or bad? Romans 9:11, 1-3. This passage, often used in discussions of election, certainly points to a divine selection preceding individual actions, but it doesn't necessitate conscious pre-existence. Scholars continue to debate the precise implications of these verses. Some interpret New You as simply God's perfect knowledge of all things, including who we would be. Others see it as a declaration of God's electing love and call, a divine decree that initiates our purpose. What remains consistent across these interpretations is the overwhelming sense of God's personal and purposeful engagement with each individual life, from its very inception, making our entry into the world a moment of divine intention, not mere biological accident. Part 3. The conclusion, echoes of eternity. So, What does the Bible reveal about life before we are born? It unveils not a chronicle of premortal adventures, but a profound truth about God's eternal nature, intimate involvement in every human story. It speaks of a God who knows us, not merely as a future possibility, but as a present reality in His divine consciousness, long before we take our first breath. Our formation in the womb is a sacred act of divine craftsmanship, and our days, though unknown to us, are known to Him. This revelation beckons us to a deeper reflection. If we were known and purposed before our birth, does this not infuse every moment of our existence with immense significance? Does it not challenge us to seek out and align with that divine purpose for which we were so wonderfully made? The candle may flicker, and the shadows may deepen, but the truth remains. We are not accidents of biology, but miracles of divine design, our lives echoing with the whisper of an eternal call that began long before we were born.